Oh yeah, that looks fantastic. That thing fits in there perfectly. What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video, I'm gonna be installing the master cylinder brace from KruseBuilt on my 1966 Mustang. Now it's well known that the firewall on these classic Mustangs is not the most supportive piece, and that you can get some flex in the master cylinder during spirited driving or even on the track. And the brace that I'm going to install is designed to reduce that flex. Let's take a look at the parts that come in the kit. These are the parts that you get in the master cylinder brace kit. You've got the bracket that mounts on the firewall behind the master cylinder. This bracket's going to mount on the shock tower. You've got your 2 threaded rods for adjustment, and then you've got your bag of hardware. It should be noted that this marking here on the end is the left-hand thread, because there is a left-hand and right-hand rod end in here. So you're going to use that for adjusting. As you spin this, either clockwise or counterclockwise, it's going to adjust the rod ends in and out. So you don't have to individually adjust them, you can just spin this. I should also point out that this kit is for the 64 to 66 Mustang. There will be a kit for later years coming down the road, and the installation will be the same. This kit will work with aftermarket master cylinders like I've got here, this Willwood unit. It'll also work with the stock single bowl and stock dual bowl, or even aftermarket versions of those master cylinders. And also notice I've got the reservoir for my hydraulic clutch mounted here on the shock tower. This should be okay, I shouldn't have to move it, but if you have stuff mounted on the shock tower, you may need to review and see if you need to move anything. The location we're gonna put that bracket is right down in here, so everything should be fine on my setup. We're gonna start by removing the 4 bolts that hold the pedal assembly to the firewall, and you're gonna use a 9/16 socket on these 4 bolts. One of the great parts about this kit is that you don't have to disconnect the brake lines or bleed anything. You don't even have to disconnect the push rod from the brake pedal down below. Let's go ahead and get this thing set up kind of in a rough position. Now I want you to notice that it's going to sit this way on the firewall, so these longer tabs are important, particularly with this bracket. The longer tabs are going to be the top bracket that goes on that shock tower, and it's actually going to mount, if the shock tower is right here and the firewall is right here, it's actually going to mount kind of at an angle like this, and so these longer tabs need to go on top. Again, with the left-hand thread, you just want to pay attention to that and make sure that you get the right one in the right end, and don't force them, because if it doesn't go in, then you've got the wrong one. You need to grab the other rod end and make sure that you've got the right one in there. And as you're getting this prepared, it's a good idea to run that jam nut all the way to the end to give us the most amount of room for adjustment. Now the rest of the hardware, what you've got here are the 4 bolts and nuts to mount the rod ends to this bracket into this bracket, and then these 2 larger units are going to be used for mounting this to the shock tower, and we'll drill holes for that, and I'll show you how we do that here in a minute. I'm just going to put this on here for now. I'm not going to tighten everything down yet. And again, with this bracket, the tall ears are going to go with the tall ears on this bracket here. Okay, that's the bracket that we're going to be putting in the car. We'll save these for when we install this on the shock tower, but let's go ahead and sit this behind the master cylinder, and then so we can start adjusting these for the length from the firewall to the shock tower. We'll go ahead and we'll just slide this behind the master cylinder. And it's okay that these tubes are going to be a little short. This bracket's not going to reach the shock tower yet. That's fine. We're going to adjust that. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the top 2 bolts in just to hold the bracket in place for now, so that I can figure out where the bracket for the shock tower is going to go. It's okay right now that the master cylinder is not bolted in. It's not going to affect the installation of this bracket right now. So now what we want to do is we want to focus on where we're going to put this on the shock tower. Now it's kind of hard to get the camera in here to see everything, but what I've got, now I can start adjusting these arms out. Starts by spinning the arm, and it's going to, by spinning it, depending on which way you have the arm facing, it's going to spin this out. You might have to spin it the other way. We're going to spin the top out and spin the bottom out, so I can get this thing to sit up flush against the flat surface of the shock tower. This will take a little bit of adjustment to get it to right where you want to be. And again, I've got the reservoir for my hydraulic clutch here, so I'm going to have to take that into consideration where I put this bracket. Now the ideal location for the bracket on the shock tower is going to have these two bars as straight as possible. Now granted, they're coming in an angle because they're coming at two different wider points, but having them as close as you can as in front of the bracket is the best location. If you go all the way over to the middle, then you're going to find that you're off the shock tower and that won't work. So it's going to have to be off to the side just a little bit, but trying to keep these things keep the bracket on the shock tower in front of that bracket as straight as you can without being farther over than you need to be. Once you're happy with the location, we're going to mark the holes in the bracket on the shock tower. We'll just use a Sharpie, and then that'll give us the location of where we're going to drill the hole. Now we'll take this whole brace kit back out of the car. And you will need to adjust these bars again by just spinning them inward just to take the tension off of them so you can get the bracket out. That's okay, we're gonna set it back up when we're done anyways. And again, it's difficult to see on the camera, but I'm gonna use a punch and put a mark right where that Sharpie was, the center of that Sharpie, so I know right where to drill. We drill a couple pilot holes. Now this lower hole might be tricky to get to. And we're going to open this up to 3/8. Now we can install this in the car for ideally the last time. And you can also tighten up the bolts here in the nut. That's a 5/32 Allen with a 7/16 driver on there for the nut. And I also found that by switching this bolt around, I had it the other way, it gave me a little more room with the clearance for my reservoir for my clutch. So the bolt direction doesn't matter. All right, now that that's secured, all 4 bolts are back into the pedal assembly on the firewall. I have a brake adjuster here for the front and rear bias, and I can still get to that. It's not as easy as it was before, but I can still reach it. Nothing's in the way, nothing's blocking it. Cool, so now let's go to mounting this bracket onto the shock tower. So you will need to remove the tire so that you can get to the bolt to put the nut on there, and then there's one further up top. I can't quite see it with the camera, but nope, there it was. And you may find it's easier to remove this cover to get to that top bolt, but you can reach up there with a wrench and put that nut on. Let's get that done real quick. And this just takes a 9/16 wrench and a 7/32 Allen for the head of that bolt. Now that we got those nuts tightened underneath, you may find that you have to spin these bars to adjust the length so that these brackets sit flush against the shock tower as you're tightening everything up. And you can use that by hand, or you can also use a 7/16 wrench and get on here and just spin them and then get them to where you want to be. And then once they're done, what we want to do is we want to spin them so they put pressure from the firewall to the tower. We want to spin it in the direction that, I think I'm spinning the right way, that it puts these bars in compression. And we can again just use a 7/16 wrench to just spin these bars and just get them dialed in where we want. And then when we get them where you want, then you just take these jam nuts, drive them down, and then use your 7/16 wrench to tighten them. All right guys, that's it. That's how you install the master cylinder brace, again from KruseBuilt. You probably noticed that this car doesn't have power brakes. There's no brake booster on here. And unfortunately, this design doesn't work with power brakes. That design may come down the road, but the problem that we'd have is that the booster is so much larger than the master cylinder that the brace would have to go around. It would be difficult to design something that works with this setup and that setup at the same time. So right now, this is only for cars with manual brakes. And again, it will work with the stock master cylinder, whether you have the single bowl or dual bowl, or even an aftermarket dual bowl that looks like the normal stock unit, or something like this Willwood unit that I have on here. The placement of those adjustment bars are far enough out that they should clear the lines that you have, the width of the bowl. I've got that bias adjustment that's mounted on the side. Again, it clears that. I've got a hydraulic clutch, and you saw that it clears that. I even have one of those residual 10-pound residual booster line things for the rear brakes. That's all below the master cylinder, so again, it clears that. There's no issue there. And you just saw how simple, just a couple of tools and a drill, and away you go. That's simple. So again, where do you get this? KruseBuilt.com is gonna be where you're gonna wanna grab this thing and get it set up for your car. And this is gonna be perfect for those guys that are, again, that like to do a little spirited driving, or even they're on the track, and you want all of that brake pressure to go towards your brakes. You don't want any of that to be lost in the flexing of the firewall, and that's exactly what this brace is gonna do. That'll be perfect for you guys. So, all right, that's it. If you guys like the video, give me a thumbs up, and if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out, and we'll see you in the next one.